Coming up today on Locked On at Texas Tech, the Red Raiders are tipping off a basketball game with the Aggies, sort of, this weekend as we prepare for the debut season of Grant McCasland. And we also have a football conversation spurred on by a Red Raider mother. Next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. And thanks for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to see you once again. Wrapping up a week without football up ahead, at least for the Red Raiders. We will get to what's going down elsewhere in the Big 12 Conference coming up in just a bit, and also have a football conversation courtesy of a football mother. I don't know if I've ever connected those words before, but they'll make sense coming up in just a moment. But first, it's actually hoops at the forefront here today, as the rumor is Texas Tech and the Aggies of Texas Agricultural and Mechanical University will gather for a round ball contest. And Denton, Maui relief is the cause. TV, radio, I don't think so. But the doors are open, so not quite a closed door scrimmage. Shout out to you if you're going to have a chance to take it in. Should be fun, and you may even learn something. But this will be, in a way, a sort of de facto debut for Grant McCasland as the Red Raider men's basketball head coach in front of fans. And we heard from Coach McCasland this week previewing the Aggies.
Looked at it myself, like trying to evaluate, like how do we want to do this, right? Do we want to try to play lineups and try to play matchups and try to learn more about our team? And there's a difference in these exhibitions. You can hey, I'm going to play as many guys as we can to try to get a feel, or are we going to try to just play this game to ultimately give us the best chance to win? And I think we'll merge the two, right? I think we'll try to give some different lineups over the course of the game, but when we get to the end of it, I think it'll be real specific in how do we win this basketball game. So I think the focus is let's keep identifying different lineups and try to make sure we give a good look, and then when you get to the end, let's put those guys out there we feel like give us the best chance to win.
And I think if you're going to go to this scrimmage, you just have to understand that A&M is loaded. They are top 15 in every poll preseason. They've got, I think, 9 guys back. They've got the SEC preseason player of the year. Make sure that, Wade Taylor. Sorry, SEC basketball is not on the top of mind awareness right now. I've still got part of my brain working on football. But they've got another really good guard. But like I said, this was a 7 seed in the NCAA tournament last year. They were 50-3 in the SEC. And again, there's a lot of expectations here. I think one of the most impressive things, though, that I could tell you is they reportedly beat Baylor in the scrimmage, I guess, about a week ago. Baylor's also supposed to be really good again. And I think that so my point is, whatever you see that is a positive, whatever it is on Sunday, I think, that really is something to feel good about. Because A&M is old, they're experienced, especially together, which is somewhat rare in this day and age to have 9 returners back off of a really good team, and they've got really good guard play. So anything that you see from a Texas Tech standpoint that looks good or is successful or whatever it may be, I think that you can kind of almost feel like a little extra positive or good about it, because this will not be easy for the Red Raiders at all. And I think that too. These scrimmages, I'm assuming because fans are there and all that, this is a bit of a doubleheader. I think North Texas is also playing somebody too. And I don't know exactly how this got put together, but I think there was a lot of discussion amongst the charity. I think could various people put things together because of the Maui Invitational and all that, because Maui, burned, much of it. And I think even where the Red Raiders were close to staying last year is just unrecognizable because of the fires there. And again, pick your charity. There's so many things or whatever that needs help, but this is the one that this is going to. But I think it's a good excuse to go to the Metroplex and play a game against a really tough opponent. I think Grant probably feels like he's in some way tipping the cap to North Texas, where he came from, and they gave him an opportunity to get back in the state of Texas, and all those things. As I know, he's still got some relationships, obviously, with the folks that are now running the North Texas program, because they were working next to him last year. So we'll see what we get, but this is not going to be easy by any means. And like I said, if you win this or hold it close or whatever, but it doesn't count. That's the beauty of it. But I guess my point was going to say is, a lot of times when they're closed, hey, let's just play halves. Let's just this one will press in this half, and we won't. You can kind of doctor it up and kind of control it, as long as everybody kind of gets what they want out of it. And they're always against teams that not going to play each other in the regular season. You can speak freely and share and all that with what your scheme or what you're going to do and all that stuff. But this one will be more like a real game, and I think officiated like it and all that stuff. So we'll see kind of what we get.
And we got November 8th tip-off, so about a week and a half, I guess, between the two.
That's exactly right.
Like that.
And then that's it. I mean, they've already scrimmaged UTEP. The A&M will be their second one. You're allowed 2 of them, and then that'll be it. Then it'll be getting ready for it. But you learn about what. Okay, we thought this was pretty good, because I think Grant basically came away from that UTEP scrimmage going, we rebounded well as a team, and when we got tested physically, you're really going to get tested here. And maybe your perimeter defense is tested here. Maybe, some of what you want to do on offense is tested here. Who knows? But Buzz Williams, obviously widely respected in the profession, does a good job. I think that, again, a lot of expectations with this A&M particular team that he's got. And they were bounced in the first round last year as a 7 seed by, I think, 10-seeded Penn State, if memory serves. So there's probably a lot of motivation this year for the Aggies and all that stuff. But it'll be a good test. So, like I said, we'll see what we get.
Man, anxious to get to the real thing. I think I'm a fan of Coach McCasland from afar. That's the only place from which I've ever observed him. I've liked what I've heard so far. Obviously it's been talking season up to this point, so you get to share these messages and your vision, and it all sounds good. But hoping for some success and for just competing, I think early in the Big 12 conference would be a really good sign maybe of some things to come. But, man, what's coming up around the corner, November 8th and then on, is I imagine a whole lot of – I don't want to say tinkering necessarily, but I wonder how much can be in place or solidified how early with how many new pieces you have to deal with and a whole new administration.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's like last year and the year before and all that stuff. Your team will look much different in – mid to late December than it is when you're scrimmaging the UTEP's A&Ms and you start out on November 8th and all that stuff, especially with so many new pieces and new coaches trying to implement new cultures and styles and schemes and all these different things, because there's going to be a lot of differences, I think, in the way that they want to do things and all that stuff. And then all the pieces are different and they're trying to gel. But I think I don't think this is like a negative per se, but I hope, like you may be seeing with football right now, you don't ever want to hear the word patience, because it's very difficult on a Saturday afternoon. There's going to be, I think, with what you're seeing with where you're at, there's going to need to be some patience there as you're trying to recruit and get all your people in there and continue to stack them and all that stuff. I think there's going to be a level of that's needed for basketball too. I don't see the overwhelming talent to be able to compete in this league at the very top end of it. And so, not that you've taken a step back, your expectations are absolutely to go to the NCAA tournament and all those things. However, I think it's going to take a bit just to get their roster how they ultimately want it, where it can contend and you can recruit and all those things, and how they want to handle the portal, and let his staff kind of attack Texas Tech and how on this job with this roster and all those things. So it's gonna take I think a bit to get it to where they ultimately want to have it, but they'll still be very competitive in the time being. That's just my take on it. But you still are sold out season tickets. You still expect to contend and win and all those things. I'm just telling you with what I see. I think it's going to be, there could be some bumps, I guess, along the way here initially, just because. we're talking about maybe your end of a shot clock or your best guys are 6 foot guards, ish, and that's the harsh reality. Whereas when you were winning a Big 12 championship, it was what Jarrett Culver, what would we say? He was 6'5", 6'6" swingman that could score on anything. And you had a 6'3" Matt Mooney out there on the wing, and you had Tariq Owens, when it was really good, I mean, there was some NBA type guys on here, and maybe Warren Washington and Cambridge and, your Darian Williams, they are NBA type guys. We just, don't necessarily know it yet. I'm just giving my opinion here.
Villanova, Butler, Vandy, some others coming up in a few weeks. So you'll have some tests in the non-conference home schedule. Obviously light as far as the non-conference is concerned, but November 8th is the tip-off. It's the Aggies in Denton coming up this weekend. We'll have some thoughts on the other side, for better or worse, on what goes down. Coming up next, we're back to the gridiron, courtesy of a mother. Whose? We'll find out next on Locked On Texas Tech. First, today's episode brought to you by Gametime, and you shouldn't have to sweat it out when buying tickets to your favorite events, and with Gametime, you won't, because it's always a breeze using the Gametime app, where you're going to find killer last-minute deals, views from every seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it begins, which means Gametime is the place to find last-minute seats for any event. The fastest, easiest way to buy tickets, and not just fast, but it's also secure and simple to use when you download the Gametime app. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime by downloading the Gametime app, creating an account, and then use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's Locked On College, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use our promo code Locked On College for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today for last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. On at Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Hope you're subscribed. With Chris, I'm Casey. Let's get back to Red Raider football. It's an open date coming up this weekend. They cannot hurt us as far as we know. Let's mind our P's and Q's down there around Broadway. Bash Rip Rocks, boys. Let's stay in line. Okay, get back to the next one. That's Thursday night against the Horned Frogs. But as for some off-week consideration, Chris, this comes via the YouTube comments, where we dip in from time to time for wisdom, strength, and knowledge. And this comes from not just anyone. Now, as I throw it up on the screen, you're going to see that there is a bit of elaboration taking place here. So not just anybody is going to get their whole message like this up on the screen. Okay, usually I trim it up, I clean it up, I cut it down for brevity's sake. Only one of us can be long-winded. I take that job. But for this special viewer, I went ahead and left it in its entirety. Here we go. This is from Icy Fashion 5403, who will reveal her true identity in just a moment. The message says, you guys constantly try to say these wide receivers haven't stepped up, but how can they work to their potential when they don't have quarterbacks? Y'all need to stop belittling that there's no playmakers there on these podcasts. But if I'm going to vouch for one, it's my number 4. That's Jordan Brown. He's always open, and when the ball comes his way, he catches it, and yards after the catch. There's several dynamic wide receivers on there, but how can you see them at potential when we are struggling at QB? Jordan is still a walk-on, but has made big clutch plays since the season started. As soon as a rhythm can get going on a QB, you'll be able to see more. Jordan Brown is a playmaker, and yes, I'm his mom, and I'm sick of hearing y'all talk about all these wide receivers not being any good when they are in this position with the QB. Chris Level, I'm sharing that with you 50-50, my man. So I'm reflecting on what she had to say. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that at some level, I don't know if we've ever said any specific receiver wasn't any good. I think that when we've talked about needing playmakers, that there's just not what I'm talking about is and I'll get to Jordan in a second because I've had several conversations with him in recent weeks, but I'm talking about somebody that is good for 7 to 10 catches every single Saturday and all those things. I also think she absolutely makes a very valid point. And I people, unfortunately, I don't think people, when we talk about, well, you got these QB struggles, they don't want to hear that. But I agree with you. I think it's very, and now with what we talked about, Cowan, with yesterday's show with Barron, you get a better feel for why there's been no rhythm and all that stuff. So it is hard to like judge and grade receivers when you haven't had any consistency at quarterback. But this is the way it's been, unfortunately, here at Tech for the last 3 to 5 years. And that's what's as far as like inconsistent QB play because of injuries and all those things. But Jordan, I do think that they, I know Zach Kitley lights up when you talk about him. I think that Zach, has started him in some of these games, feels like they do give him something different. I think it's very fair for Miss Brown to suggest that he is open, because there's been times West Virginia, I want to say BYU, I want to say even Kansas State, there were some deep throws that were missed when he was open and behind the defense and all those things. So I think that is that is fair. I mean, I'll own that criticism, and I don't think I ever like called out Jordan specifically. He's just
way down the list right now.
Yeah. And I don't think we actually singled out anybody. I do think it's absolutely fair to take up for the wideouts, because their job is solely based on how the QB plays or delivers it. I think that is in some ways got to be very frustrating.
Yeah.
I think, though, that when you semi had a healthy QB, I think and maybe it was our fault. I think the bar here is very high for wide receiver play. And I just thought I thought you'd see more as a group and like doing more with some of the opportunities. But there was, this isn't, I don't know if Jordan was responsible, but Cowan, a lot of drops, we talked about the yards after the catch not necessarily being there. And that's, but because at this point, I would say the three guys that are playing the best maybe right now, and Jordan is in that group. I think Coy Aiken and Miles Price are like, and then Xavier White had the monster catch the other day. But I don't, so those, and I think, ironically enough, I think Coy and Jordan and Miles are three of the ones that started against BYU, and I think that's why. But we hear you. I think he sat out the Baylor game. And I think that's right. There was a game set out, and I knew he was very frustrated. And he's like, "Man, I'll be back soon." And I think Joey said it was like a hip issue or whatever. And so I can't remember exactly. There was in recent week or two he had kind of missed some time, but no, I think he's turned a corner, and I don't think he'll be a walk-on very much longer. I'll say that. I don't think that will last very long, much longer, because I think he's really turned a page. I think he's matured, and he's got some wiggle and juice to him. Yeah, and I think that you desperately lack that. Hence the reason I think he's kind of pushed his way into starter / let's try to get him the ball some more.
Yeah, he was kind of the talk of fall camp at that position or among that group. And yeah, he's way down the list of those who I'm consistently saying, where you at? I mean, there are guys. So anyway, he's way down the list. Like I told Mama on YouTube, I understand you defending your son. No problem with that whatsoever. But what I don't understand is the football team going 3-5, and then a podcast host is getting chastised. The hell? We ain't taking a snap yet, but we're glad you're out there. Thanks for the comment, and thanks for watching. We're always here.
And she raised a good young man. He's got a big old smile on his face, and I think he's got his best days are ahead of him.
We're sticking with football as we wrap up the week. Coming up next, Tech is not taking part, but somehow, some way, the Big 12 will still have a football weekend. We'll take a look at the slate up ahead on Locked On Texas Tech. First, today's episode brought to you by PrizePicks, the most exciting way to test your skills and play daily fantasy sports, and a great way to add juice to any game anytime. And if you've got the game, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and a giant selection of players, projections, and stat categories are just part of what makes PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. So go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. That's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, right now, PrizePicks is going to match your first deposit up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDONCollege at prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Daily fantasy sports made easy. Locked On at Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network with Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan, back to wrap up the week with a Big 12 whip around. This is a party the Red Raiders are not taking part in, but a few to consider. Either way, Chris, beginning Saturday morning from Lawrence, Kansas, where Oklahoma is a road favorite. -10 is the number I'm seeing here as they head to take on the Jayhawks. 7-0. 5-2 for the Sooners and the Jayhawks. How do you like this one?
Well, it sounds like at the time that we're sitting here talking that Jalen Daniels won't play in this game. At least that's kind of what I've seen, but I don't know if anybody ultimately knows. But I think Lance Leipold kind of indicated that Jason Bean would get the starter, and that makes me tilt toward Oklahoma a bit. But I'll say this. It's an early kick at home, which isn't ideal for the home team, but I'm willing to bet you. I bet this is a sneaky close game, and I bet like last week because I think Oklahoma's good. I don't want anybody to be confused there. I just don't think they're like world beaters. I don't think they're like they can just show up and they're just going to roll. Kansas will make it very interesting and intriguing. And what I thought it was interesting is because I think we all agree Jalen Daniels is a difference maker for Kansas, but he's been out for 2 to 3 weeks now. And I think they're starting to get some criticism and like, what's going on with him? And does he even want to play? I don't know what's going on there. It's not that'll be Tech's problem here in about a week or so. But what Oklahoma State did with Kansas with Jason being at quarterback is they're like, you got all these stud running backs and like, Devin Neal and Highshaw and all these guys, and Bean is lightning fast. But they basically just said, you're not running it today. And so Bean threw for 400 plus and 5 touchdowns, but he made a key mistake at the end and threw an interception and ultimately allowed Oklahoma State to get out with a close win there. But that's kind of what I wonder here. Can Jason Bean avoid that mistake and make enough plays to keep his team in it? Because I'm guessing Oklahoma will say, not going to run wild on us today. So we'll see. But I'll take Oklahoma. I'll say this. The spread is 10. I'll take Kansas plus 10. How about that?
All right. Houston K-State also kicking off that morning. But I think the other morning ball game possibly that's got my attention, Central Florida, West Virginia, because West Virginia was sitting there at 4-1. Then all of a sudden a Hail Mary and a loss to a team that lost to South Alabama later. They're not feeling like that anymore. They're 4-3, and they're going to Orlando to take on a team that, probably didn't deserve to win the game in Norman, but I'll be damned if they didn't almost make enough plays to win that game against Oklahoma. I think this is a pretty tricky one for the Mountaineers, Chris. What do you think of either UCF West Virginia or K-State Houston?
Sometimes it's about when you play people. And I think it was bad for West Virginia to play Oklahoma State at the time that they played them because Oklahoma State has now figured it out, and they caught them right when they were in the process of. I think Ollie Gordon, the running back, went for like 248 up in Morgantown. Because, the defense that we saw, it seemed very difficult. Like it was – and then they were healthier then at that point too. They suffered a lot of injuries when they played TCU. But I also think that they're going to catch it's bad time to be playing Central Florida right now because it's in Orlando. I think that Central Florida has kind of started to get a little confidence back because they got their quarterback back. It's his first game back last week. I think all of a sudden they look very competitive in John Rice Plumlee. And I think that – and Central Florida is going to kick themselves if they don't get to a bowl game because of what they allowed Baylor to do to them on their home field.
Yep.
That is just one that they're going to go, can we not get, remember like PGO when you were playing flag football with your buddies or touch football, whatever, play goes over. Whatever you call it. Yeah, PGO, man. Hey, man, that's not fair. You can't do that. So we're going to redo the play. They would love one of those PGOs against Baylor. But, I'll take Central Florida here. I think they may roll in this one, actually.
Never heard of a PGO. We didn't have that on 28th Street over in the LFD.
Yeah. It's kind of like a mulligan in golf, but it was like PGO whenever you're playing out in the street and whatever, tag or whatever. Yeah.
Might use that when I say the next stupid thing to the wife, which could be within the hour, knowing the rate I typically work on. How about this big number? 17.5 at home for the Longhorns as they get the Cougars we just saw. BYU is sitting there at 5-2, Chris, saying somebody please respect us, but nobody, I don't guess media-wise, is wanting to do that. Sluggish, doesn't look all that pretty, but get a win last week, and they're one game away from bowl eligibility. 17.5 is what I'm seeing today for the Longhorns at home. You think BYU can make it interesting at all with little QB trouble now there for Texas?
Maybe interesting, but really, I don't. I just think Texas has too much juice. I mean, and what's funny is BYU's got this crazy winning streak or this great record over Texas in the times they played them, because I think they won. I want to say they played like 3 or 4 years in a row. Taysom Hill would always just come out of nowhere and just light Texas up. Taysom Hill been in the NFL playing with the Saints for years now, and he would just crush the Longhorns. I mean, just embarrass them. And all those things. I want to say BYU was like 4-1 versus Texas. I don't know if that's all time or like in that recent time frame. I think Taysom Hill responsible for either 3 or 4 of those victories. They don't have Taysom Hill right now. I wasn't very impressed with them. It's very frustrating that you weren't good enough as Texas Tech to beat these guys. It tells you all you've turned it over 5 times, 4 on offense, 1 on special teams, and you're still within striking distance of these guys.
Yes.
They were just begging to be beaten or just trying to sit on the lead. I just think Texas has too much juice and no margin for error. And I think Malik Murphy, that experiment will be interesting. Big giant dude, 6'6", like 235, has a cannon, doesn't run great. Maybe there's some mistakes that he makes, but I think if there's any mistakes that he does make, old Arch Manning's sitting over there, and that will get the crowd all lit up, because I guarantee a lot of folks that will show up at DKR on Saturday will be hoping that Malik Murphy does screw up so Arch Manning can come in, and they want to be there to see it. But I think Texas will cover this one. I really do.
I mean, Texas is still sitting at 6-1, so the soap opera is just beginning as far as the intrigue is concerned with the QB or anything else that might come that team's way. All right, join us on Monday as we will recap the weekend that was and look ahead to a short week for Red Raiders and Horned Frogs coming up from Jones Stadium as they are back in action from Lubbock. Thanks for joining us as always, and we hope to see you for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.